Tag, we're going to you in Connecticut.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully,
Actually, a question for you, Tag. You weren't the AD at Yale? No,
assistant athletic director. So I started there as an intern and stayed for 8 years as an assistant athletic director in facilities and varsity operations. So we got that little commonality there, Colin.
Nice. What years?
So that was 1990 to 1998.
Gotcha. We just missed each other.
I just missed you. Yeah.
Started there in 2002.
Yep. Yeah. Cool place.
Tom Beckett, was he the AD then?
So when I started, it was Ed Woodson.
Okay.
And then Tom Beckett came in 95, who's a great mentor of mine. Yeah. So no, thanks. We got it between the Yale thing, your dad being an Eagle Scout, the story about your mom resonated because I actually had a conversation with my 21-year-old son in the car last week along the same lines as well. It's really cool. We're so lucky as adults to get to meet people like yourself that are so amazingly, crazily inspirational. My work is with students in grades K through 12. I've been on your website. I see that you speak. I've seen your programming, your nonprofit, and your outreach there, and some of the pictures of you interacting with young people as well, and that whole program as well. So my question today kind of goes to that. What are some things that you do when you're talking about your possible mindset and you're in a group of young people that are underprivileged, don't have access to a lot of things? Are there a couple of things that you could just share just now in this question period, how you kind of address them and what you do to ignite them? And over time, you're still young, but over time, like when we're in education, we're lucky enough, if we're fortunate enough to have a feedback loop where we get to see kids like my first student athletes are now 40 years old. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate enough sometimes to bump into them and get feedback. I'm just curious in your work thus far, if kind of your message and if you've even gotten some of that feedback loop yet. And later on, I reached out to you on LinkedIn, but I'd love to connect to see what I can do to bring you to my school district.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely, that's a sidebar about that for sure. No, it's amazing. And it's amazing that you've had such a, long career, long enough that you can see that feedback loop of people over time. I mean, it's beautiful. Our work has evolved over the years, of course. And really, it feels like a long time. We started in 2015, but I know in the grand scheme, that's also just a short period of time. But we've, enough that there was kids who were in elementary school or elementary school were getting ready to graduate from high school now, things like that, which is really, really fun to see. I haven't done any sort of like, this is all anecdotal, right? So I haven't done any like longitudinal study, like over time of what has worked and what hasn't worked, et cetera. But one of the things that I have found, when you mentioned sort of like equity, component of this is, one thing that I'm deeply passionate about, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited about the 12-hour walk, not just from the context of, students and education, but just globally, is I found myself speaking, sharing my stories about literally climbing Mount Everest, about walking across Antarctica, et cetera. And people got very excited about that, but then would very quickly get to this place of cool, but like I'm, from an underprivileged neighborhood in wherever, and I'm probably not going to fly to the other side of the world to climb mountains. In fact, I don't even want to climb mountains. Like like it was a cool story, but like, how does this connect and relate to me? And so a lot of my work over the last few years, both with my expeditions, the 12-hour walk, et cetera, has been to create inroads to that of accessibility. Well, like I said, I sort of stumbled across this 12-hour walk concept, but what I love so much about it is that it really is an invitation for people to be able to do this in sort of any circumstance for the most part, right? The 50 high points that Scott mentioned earlier, again, not something that I necessarily got all the press about, but what was really fun about that project that he didn't mention was on the 50 high points. And this actually started because I was having a conversation with students in Florida, a lower income school district in Florida. I was doing a bunch of work with them and I was talking about my next projects. And they were like, we love this, but there's no mountains in Florida. And like, this is our circumstances. We're not going to necessarily allow for this, at least in this moment in time they're living. And so the 50 high points idea was born. I wanted to set this world record, but I actually did this thing called the Forrest Gump effect, which is I invited any person to come climb any of the mountains with me in their home state. And so in Florida, it's a 350-foot hill on the side of the road, but we had a bunch of teachers and educators, and they brought their students out to walk the literal, 40 feet up this hill and touch Florida's highest point. And we had that across the entire United States. So anyways, it's a meandering question. I'd love to talk to you just sort of more about it in the long run. But the point is I've always tried to sort of instill what's the accessible parts of it. And I also say, outside of climbing, outside of actually the experiential part of that, the most important muscle any of us has is the 6 inches between our ears. And I fundamentally believe no matter what circumstances we are in, we do have the ability to flex and develop that, even with limited resources, even with limited opportunities in the short run, even at different ages. And so a lot of my work focuses on things that are accessible to everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer.
Brad,